Titan Army just sent me this display to test for you guys. It's the P27A2R. It has a nice high quality metal stand, DisplayPort cable, and a nice small power brick. Has two HDMIs, two DisplayPorts, and an audio jack, and it's got full articulation to vertical if you want to use it for that, which is pretty sweet. And this thing is an IPS panel, so it's 1440p, 180 hertz, 1 millisecond gray to gray, 95% of the DCI-P3 color gamut, 3-year warranty, and we'll test that 300 nits of brightness claim here in a little bit. So 180 hertz refresh rate at $200, that's pretty sweet. 8 bits of color though, so keep that in mind. And these ports stick straight out, so that is a problem. It goes right into the stand. And there's an RGB light bar on each side that cannot be turned off, so that is something to note. It's just very subtle though. 180 hertz is achieved with the included DisplayPort cable, which is awesome. The OSD, you've got some gamer features included, but man, the OSD is kind of finicky. It's a little hard to navigate, and it's not as intuitive as some of the other monitors you may be used to. And so just keep that in mind as you're navigating through this menu. You have to push right to confirm the option instead of like pushing down on the little menu button, which is kind of interesting and weird. But once you get used to that, you are able to enable and disable certain things that you want to use. And so once this thing is set up and you're able to get going, the colors look fantastic right out of the box. I did turn it from the warm setting to the neutral setting, which looked a lot more accurate for sRGB color in normal gaming. So here you can see in Halo, I'm pushing 180 hertz refresh rate and pushing well over 200 frames a second using a 4080 Super. To get that 180 hertz refresh rate, you're gonna need a higher end GPU like a 4080 Super. Probably even a 4070 will work just fine for that. But when you're using this display in that mode, it's pretty sweet to see 180 hertz. 180 hertz motion looks a lot better than 120 hertz, which is the LG C2 OLED, which I also have. And so seeing these two compared in gaming, you can see that 180 hertz is pretty sweet, and it allows you to win exceptionally well. And so even for story-based games like Horizon Forbidden West, this display is superb. There is no HDR, so that is something to keep in mind, but in regular SDR formats for this story mode kind of games, the colors look really good, and this is just the colors out of the box. So yeah, you're able to push really good frame rates in this game too, especially when you have DLSS enabled. Man, I just really enjoyed the contrast levels, and the overall colors and feel of this display look really good. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Titan Army is actually owned by INNOCN, and you can see the color reproduction quality that comes through, because I have reviewed a lot of INNOCN displays, and those displays look really good out of the box for color. So I think overall, like the highlight levels and the overall contrast, which a game like this has a lot of contrast and beautiful scenery, and all of that looks really well preserved and honored in these story mode kind of games. And so game designers can be really happy to see a game like this make their content look really good. And for you guys that just enjoy to sit back and play a story-based game, a 27-inch display is actually not that bad. You can sit up a little bit closer to it and get the same feel as like a 32-inch display just by moving just a little bit closer to the display, which is pretty sweet. So I really appreciated the color saturation on this display, and later on in this video you'll see where I do actually calibrate this to look even a little bit better. And on a Mac, you're maxed out to 144 hertz, at least using the HDMI cable. And you can see here it does have DCI-P3 coverage on that little web page test. I'll leave a link below for that page where you can test your Mac to see if the monitor you're using covers DCI-P3. And so for Mac and creative use, this display is really great out of the box. Like, I didn't do anything, like I said, other than just change it to that neutral color mode, which looked a lot more accurate. And looking at content and graphic design and fluid design elements, everything looks super smooth. I mean, 144 hertz on a display on a Mac is pretty sweet, because the Apple Studio display is only 60 hertz. So to have a display like this run at 144 hertz, all of the fluid motion and dynamic content that you may be creating or working on or experiencing will look a lot smoother. And then I did actually calibrate this display to see if I could get it even more accurate than what it was out of the box. And I was able to do that. I was able to get a much better calibration to get that pretty much 95% DCI-P3. The native brightness that I got was 283 nits of brightness, so a little bit less than the claimed 300, just to note that. Once calibrated, all of the photography that I'm normally looking at and all of the content I'm normally looking at all looked fantastic and very color accurate, preserving shadow detail, gradients. All the color transitions in the spectrum looked spot on to me, even with bright contrasty images. And man, having that 144 hertz on a Mac, for example, just made anything with motion very fluid, as well as images that I had processed before. All of my photography looked spot on. I didn't notice any issues looking at all of this photography. I had processed and color corrected on the Apple Studio display. All of the images looked perfect to my eyes as delivered to my client. So this is very reassuring, and I can actually basically equate this to like a high-end art monitor in a way. So for $200, man, that is pretty awesome. It's a great value to have a $200 display that does gaming and content creation. What a great bargain. Man, it sure is great to see a display like this that literally checks all the boxes and gives you everything you want in an inexpensive display. This thing is only $200 right now. If you use my code right now, Johnny27, you'll get an additional 5% off on top of that already discounted price. It's hard to argue with a display at this price point that gives you P3 color and 180 hertz in a 1440p 27-inch display. It's really nice to see manufacturers create a display like this that is easily attainable by any customer, and it's a great display for both gaming and productivity. Thank you guys so much for sticking around and checking out this review of the Titan Army P27A2R gaming monitor. If you liked this display, please use my referral link down below to purchase it. It's just a small way to support my channel. If you can, just take a moment, subscribe to my channel, give me a thumbs up if you like today's content, and ring that bell to get notified when I drop new content. And I'll see all of you on my next video.